Navigating Russia's travel restrictions can be a tricky task for tourists. With constantly changing regulations and a complex visa process, it's important to stay informed and plan ahead. First, it's important to note that Russia currently has a number of restrictions in place due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. These restrictions include mandatory quarantine measures for travelers arriving from certain countries and regions, as well as testing and documentation requirements. When planning your trip, it's essential to check the most up-to-date information on the Russian government's website, as well as the website of your embassy in Russia. You should also consider consulting with a travel agent who specializes in Russia, as they will have the most current information on restrictions and requirements. In terms of visa requirements, tourists from many countries will need to obtain a tourist visa before entering Russia. This process can take several weeks, so it's important to plan ahead and apply for your visa well in advance of your trip. It's also important to note that there are some areas of Russia that are off-limits to tourists, such as the Russian-occupied Crimea region and certain parts of the North Caucasus. Make sure to research your destination and ensure that it is safe and accessible before booking your trip. In addition, it's always a good idea to familiarize yourself with local customs and laws before traveling to a new country. Russia has strict laws around things like drug possession and LGBT rights, so it's important to understand and respect these laws while you're in the country. Another important aspect of traveling to Russia is having the proper documentation. Make sure to bring your passport, visa, and any other necessary documents with you at all times. It's also a good idea to make copies of your documents and leave them with a friend or family member back home, just in case you lose the originals while you're traveling. It's also important to have travel insurance while visiting Russia. This will provide coverage in case of any unexpected events, such as illness or accidents. Make sure your policy covers medical expenses, as healthcare in Russia can be quite expensive. When planning your itinerary, it's also important to consider the time of year you're traveling. Russia has a harsh winter, with temperatures dropping well below freezing in many parts of the country. If you're planning to travel during the winter months, make sure to pack warm clothing and be prepared for snowy and icy conditions. When it comes to transportation, Russia has a well-developed system with options like train, bus, and plane. Trains are a popular and comfortable way to travel around Russia, but you should also consider other options for your trip. Be sure to book your tickets in advance, as they can sell out quickly during peak travel seasons. It's always a good idea to learn a few basic phrases in the local language before traveling to a new country. Even a little bit of knowledge can go a long way in helping you navigate your way around and communicate with locals. Another important aspect of traveling to Russia is understanding the local currency and how to exchange money. The Russian currency is the ruble, and it is best to have cash on hand, as not all places accept credit or debit cards. You can exchange money at banks, currency exchange offices, or at your hotel. It's a good idea to check the exchange rate before you go, so you have an idea of how much things will cost. When it comes to accommodations, Russia offers a variety of options for travelers, from budget hostels to luxury hotels. It's a good idea to research and book your accommodations in advance, as popular tourist destinations can fill up quickly during peak travel seasons. Food is also an important aspect of any trip, and Russia offers a delicious array of traditional dishes that you should try. From hearty soups like borscht to meat dishes like shashlik, there's something for everyone. Keep in mind that most restaurants in Russia don't have English menus, so it's a good idea to have a translation app handy or learn some basic food vocabulary before you go. Safety is always a top concern when traveling, and Russia is no exception. Like any other big city, it is important to be aware of your surroundings, keep your valuables safe, and avoid any dangerous areas. Always keep your passport and other important documents in a safe place, and be aware of pickpocketing, especially in crowded areas like train stations and tourist hotspots. In addition to all the above-mentioned things, it's also important for tourists to be aware of the cultural differences when visiting Russia. Russians have a different way of communicating and interacting with others, and it's important to be respectful of their customs and traditions. For example, it's considered rude to speak loudly in public or to make direct eye contact with someone for an extended period of time. It's also important to dress modestly when visiting religious sites, such as churches and cathedrals. Women should cover their shoulders and legs, and men should wear long pants. It's also considered disrespectful to take pictures inside of churches and other religious sites, so be sure to check for posted signs before taking out your camera. When it comes to hospitality, Russians are known for their warmth and generosity. They may invite you to their homes for a meal or to join them for a drink, and it's considered polite to accept these invitations. It's also important to be aware of the political climate in Russia. Russia has a complex political history, and some sensitive topics should be avoided during conversations with locals. It's also important to be aware of the current political climate and any potential safety concerns. Lastly, it's important to note that Russia is a vast country with many different regions and cultures. Each area has its own unique customs and traditions, so be sure to research the specific customs of the area you'll be visiting. Overall, by keeping all the above-mentioned information in mind, you will be able to navigate Russia's travel restrictions and have a safe, enjoyable, and culturally rich trip.